I found a QR code scribbled inside my textbook, and scanning it was the worst decision I ever made in my life. I bought the book from some guy on a resale app because the campus bookstore wanted $90 for it. The seller met me outside the library and handed over the textbook for $30 cash, and I thought I had gotten such a good deal until I opened it later that night in my apartment. Someone had drawn a QR code in black marker on the inside of the front cover. I was shocked when it actually scanned when I held my phone over it. I figured it was probably some stupid meme or maybe a study guide the previous owner had linked, so I tapped the notification and my screen loaded a video feed. The image was dark and grainy like a cheap security camera, and it took me a few seconds to understand what I was looking at. There was a chair in the center of a concrete room, and someone was sitting in it with their arms pulled behind their back and their head slumped forward like they were unconscious or worse. I watched for maybe 10 seconds waiting for something to happen, because part of me still thought this had to be some kind of prank or art project. But then the person in the chair lifted their head slightly, and I saw that their mouth was covered with tape. I closed the app so fast I nearly dropped my phone. I called the police and told them everything, but the officer who showed up at my apartment looked at the feed for about 30 seconds before telling me it was probably a prank. I asked how he could be sure, and he said the video quality was too bad to identify anything. After he left, I sat on my couch and kept watching the feed because I could not make myself close it, and that was when I noticed something about the room that made my whole body go still. The concrete walls had this weird yellowish stain near the ceiling that looked like water damage, and there was a small window near the top of the frame that had been covered with black plastic. I had seen that window before. I had seen that stain before. I had complained about that stain to my landlord 3 years ago when I lived in a rental house with 4 other guys, and the basement flooded every time it rained. I recognized the pipe running along the ceiling, and I recognized the crack in the foundation by the floor. I recognized everything about that room because I had lived above it for an entire year. I started texting each of my roommates from that year, asking if they had heard anything weird about the old house or if they knew who was renting it now. Nobody responded. I called one of them and the number was disconnected, and I called another and it went straight to voicemail with an inbox that was completely full. I was about to try the third when I looked back at my phone and saw the person in the chair thrashing against the restraints like they were trying to break free, and then a shadow moved across the wall behind them like someone had just walked into the room. I grabbed my keys and ran out to my car because I knew the cops would not believe me if I called again, and I knew that whoever was in that chair did not have time for me to convince them. The house looked exactly the same except the porch light was burned out and the lawn was overgrown. I parked across the street and watched for any sign of movement, but every window was dark and there were no cars in the driveway. I still had a key because the landlord never asked for it back when I moved out, and I told myself I would just check the basement and leave if there was nothing there. The front door opened easily, and the house smelled like dust and mildew and something else underneath that I did not want to identify. I walked through the living room and the kitchen, and everything was empty like no one had lived there in months, and when I reached the basement door, I had to force myself to turn the handle. The stairs creaked under my feet, and I used my phone flashlight to see because there was no light switch at the top of the staircase. The chair from the video was still sitting in the center of the room, but whoever had been in it was gone. I swept my flashlight across the room looking for any sign of the person in the feed, and that was when I saw what looked like a fresh puddle of blood on the floor. I ran up those stairs so fast I tripped twice, and I did not stop until I was in my car with the doors locked and the engine running and the house shrinking in my rearview mirror. I sped back home and locked myself inside my room. I pulled up the video feed again with shaking fingers, and the basement looked exactly like I had just left it, except now there were 5 names written in big letters on the wall. All but one name had thick lines painted through them like they had been crossed off a list. I recognized all of them. It was the names of my former roommates from when I had lived in that house. The 5th name was mine, and there was no line through it yet.